Hi, my name is David Rippy. I am a certified hypnotherapist where I take clients into a deep hypnotic state where they can share details of a previous life. This is the chapter titled The Man with the Burned Face in my book, The Immortal Soul. Enjoy.
The Man with the Burned Face. This reading was conducted for a female client in her mid-20s. It was her first past life regression and first time being hypnotized. Much of the hypnotic induction was left out and begins at the end stages of the process to bring about a very deep, relaxed state. Though it was the first time the subject had been hypnotized, her practice of meditation helped to put her in a deep, somnambulistic state fairly quickly. David, you're floating along, so relaxed. Counting down from 5 to 4. Down to 3 and sinking deeper and deeper. Feeling this bubble just take you in and carry you where it wants to. As I count down to 2. Floating above a beautiful sea of flowers, as I count down to 1. And as you continue to float along, you start to feel images come into your mind of another time, another life. As you are floating along, just let everything happen to you that you see. You can start to visualize something, perhaps a location or a house. You see yourself somewhere as you're floating along in your mind. You begin to see, perhaps someone that doesn't look like you, but you just know it is as you're floating along in your mind's eye. Tell me what you see. Subject, snoring softly. David, you're not sleeping, but deeply relaxed, hearing my voice. So, think about it for a minute. What do you see or what do you hear or smell? Subject, long pause, deep breathing, burning wood. David, you see wood again? Subject, smells like burning wood. David, does it smell like a fireplace or? Subject, it does outside. It's burning outside. David, it's burning outside. Okay. Is it a controlled fire? Or does it smell like it is in the distance? Subject, it's far away but not that far. David, are there woods around you? Subject, no. David, but you can smell it. Do you see where you are? Subject, living on a street. David, you are on a street and you smell burning wood. Are there houses on the street? What does it look like? Subject, long pause, I see a man. David, okay. Subject, I opened a door. A man with a burned face was standing there. David, was he burned by the fire? Subject, I think the building caught on fire. Pause, I don't think he got out. David, but he somehow made it to your door. Subject, yeah. David, are you in your house or somewhere else? Subject, I'm in the house now. David, was he coming to your door, maybe for help? Subject, I think so. David, were his clothes burned too? Subject, yeah, they were covered in soot. David, does he look like he's in a lot of pain? Subject, no, I think he's a ghost. David, so he doesn't appear to have a solid body? Subject, no, he does, but he doesn't look real. David, is he talking to you with words, or is he talking to you with his mind? Subject, he's not talking. I opened the door and he was there, but he wasn't there a minute ago. David, okay. Pause, and what are you wearing? What do you think you are wearing? Asking a subject for a clothing description early on brings their focus toward themselves and lessens the impact of witnessing unfamiliar sights like ghosts. Often apparel or dwelling descriptions can help to determine possible timeframes for the life they are viewing. Subject, pause, I can't see myself. David, okay. But you can see your house? Subject, I'm just in a hallway at the front door. David, now is the man still standing there on your porch? Subject, yeah. David, did he tell you what he wants? Subject, yes, he said, this is my room. David, so you think he might have lived there before you? Subject, I think so. I think it's a boarding house. David, do any names of locations come to mind? Subject, I don't know. I don't know. David, do you know your name? Subject, pause, deep breathing, Liza. David, Liza. Subject, yeah. David, that's a pretty name. What does it look like inside when you look around? Does it look old inside, or what time period do you think it is? Subject, it's old. It's 19. 1900s. 19 I can't tell. 1916? 1917? David, now do you think he was burned when he lived there? Or was it somewhere else? Do you think there was a fire, or do you think maybe it could have been a war? Subject, he's not in a uniform, and I think it was a fire in the house. I think he fell asleep with his pipe burning. I think that's how it happened, that's how he burned his face. David, so you think this is the boarding house where he burned himself? Where is this house located? See what he says. Subject, he says Cambridge. David, okay. And does he have a name of the house or street? Subject, hesitates, I think it's Cads. C-A-D. Cadbury. Cadbury Street. David, now is it Cambridge in Boston? Subject, yes, Massachusetts. David, so Cadbury Street and you feel it's around 1916? Subject, yeah. David, you know your name is Liza. Subject, yes. David, do you know your last name? Subject, pause. It starts with. David, does it have 2 syllables? Subject, Thornston? Thurston. David, just let it come. See if you see it in your mind. Subject, Thompson. Thompson. David, and you feel it was on Cadbury St? Subject, yes, Cadbury Street. David, so Cadbury sounds right. Now since you were there, and the ghost man was there, do you have a number for the house on that street? What number pops in your mind for that street address? Subject, pause, I can't see a number. David, that's fine. If you walk outside. Can you walk outside for me? Subject, it's cold. David, it's cold out? So, it is around winter time you think? Subject, no it's not, but it's cold. David, so it's cold out and is the wind blowing a little bit? Subject, it's windy. David, I don't want you to go too far outside, but do you remember if the number of the house is on the front of the house, or is it way out on the street? Subject, 33. Number 33. David, so you feel pretty good that it is 33, right? Subject, I saw the number on the house. David, good, and how long have you been there, you think? Subject, not long. David, less than a year? Subject, that's right. David, and were you renting a room? Subject, yes. David, how old do you think you were then? Subject, pause, I think I'm older. In my 30s or 40s. David, and how did you happen to come to live there? Did you come from somewhere else or what? Subject, yeah. I think I work. In someone else's house. David, good. And what do you do in the other person's house? Subject, pause, I'm a nanny. David, little children, I guess. Subject, yeah. David, how many are you watching? Subject, 3. David, 3 children. Do you know their names or ages? Subject, the oldest is 8 and the youngest is still a baby. David, do you know their last name, the family that you work for? Subject, Stanley. David, Stanley. Do you know the mister of the house's first name? Subject, Robert. David, what's the wife's name that you work for? Subject, pause, deep breath, Eleanor. David, so Robert and Eleanor Stanley. You think that's pretty accurate? Subject, that's it. David, now, what does Robert do in the Cambridge area? Subject, he works in a steel plant. He owns it. David, so he's pretty well off, I guess. Subject, yeah. David, is it a big house? Subject, yeah, it's big. David, so it's a nice house. Subject, MHM, yes, it is very nicely decorated. David, now the steel company that Robert works for, can you see the name of it? Subject, it starts with a B, but I can't see the rest. David, do you think it is 2 syllables? Subject, I think it's 2. David, so he owns the steel company, but he didn't name it after himself, I guess. Subject, he, I think, inherited it from someone else. David, does it employ a lot of people? Subject, yeah. David, so it is a pretty well-known steel company. Subject, yeah. David, what do they make with that steel? Do they do a lot of different things? Do you know? Subject, I don't know. David, but you think it starts with a B. Can you see the next letter in the word? Subject, U. David, so it is a B-U. What's after that? Subject, C. I can't see the rest. David, so it's Book, and how long have you worked for this family? What was their last name again? As you will notice in other readings in the book, I find that checking a subject's recall of pertinent and specific details later in the session is a good idea. Asking the same questions provides 3 things: a sense that they are living that life, they are deep enough to absorb the life fully, and they are not fabricating the information they're giving. Subject, Stanley. David, how long have you worked there? Subject, less than a year. David, so you took a job and then moved. I forget, what was the name of the street you moved to? Subject, Cadbury Street. David, so you moved there to take this job, is that correct? Subject, yeah, a friend of mine told me about it. David, so you got a good job with a prominent family in the Boston area. Subject, that's right. David, and you think you are in your 30s maybe? Subject, yeah, my 30s or 40s. David, what color is your hair now? Subject, it's dark, it's brown of some shade. David, and your name is Liza, is that right? Subject, yeah, Liza. David, do you have a middle name? Subject, I think it was Marie. David, so you are pretty sure Liza Marie. What was your last name again? Subject, Thompson. David, Liza Marie Thompson. And have you been? Did you come from another nanny job in Boston, or did you come from out of state, or out of city? Subject, I don't remember. David, okay. Is this one of your best jobs you've had in that life? Subject, I like those kids. David, they were fun? Subject, they were smart. They were well behaved. David, do you remember the name of the 8-year-old? Subject, Prudence. David, so, they had a daughter named Prudence. Did she have a middle name? Subject, I don't know what her middle name is. David, but her last name was Stanley, correct? Subject, yeah. David, now when you look at that beautiful house, let's say you're standing outside now, like you are about to go to work one day, what street is your job located on? Subject, pause, starts with ins. It's the name of a tree. I think it was sycamore. I think it was sycamore. David, are you sure it was a tree? Subject, yeah, a tree, the name of a tree. David, now when you look at their front door or front of their house, what was the house number? Do you remember? Subject, 118. David, 118, and when you think about it now, and let it sink in, Sycamore seems like the name of that street. Is that right? Subject, I think so. David, or it could have been Cedar and begin with a C? Subject, no, I think it was an S. Sycamore sounds right. David, and how far from work was the boarding house where you lived? Subject, a trolley ride away. David, so it was a trolley ride away, a mile maybe, half a mile? Subject, not that far. David, so it wasn't that far of a ride on the trolley. Do you remember what they charged for a trolley ride to the house? Subject, just 2 coins. David, what were those coins denominated as? Subject, a 5 cent and a penny, I think. David, so maybe like a nickel and a penny or 6 cents. Subject, something like that. 7 cents or 6 cents. David, so pretty reasonable, or does that seem like a lot of money back then? Subject, I made a good amount of money working for that family. David, so you were doing pretty well at that age, weren't you? Subject, well, I didn't have kids either, so I only had my own expenses to worry about. David, do you remember that house on Cadbury? What do they charge you for boarding? Do you remember? Was it by the month? Subject, yeah, it was a monthly amount. David, do you remember how much that was? Subject, I think it. Pause, I think it was 7 something. I think $70 something a month. David, so was it pretty nice boarding house for roughly $70 a month? Subject, it was big, yeah. David, so did you have a nice room? Subject, yeah, it was nice. But that man was always there. That ghost. David, did you see him regularly? Subject, yeah. David, now, did you have the ability to see ghosts back then or not? Subject, I could see him. David, was he a nice ghost or what? Subject, I think he was lonely. David, okay. And you were able to see him. Did other people ever see him, or you don't know? Subject, no, they didn't see him, but sometimes they'd hear him. David, how big was this boarding house? How many rooms did they rent out? Subject, it was 4 stories tall. David, wow, so it was a nice size. Subject, yes. David, do you remember what the outside looked like? Subject, it was brick. David, when you look at that man, what was his name? Did he ever tell you? Subject, I don't remember his name. David, he died in a fire, but no one knew his name. Subject, he didn't tell me his name, I never knew it. David, but he let you know he was in a fire in the house smoking a pipe, is that right? Subject, I think so. David, now how long did you work for the Stanleys? Do you remember? Subject, yeah, for 6 years. David, then what happened? Did the kids go to school? Subject, no, the money. Something with the money. The stock market or the stocks that he had. His business went bad. He poorly invested, I think, something foolish in his business plan. Like I said, I think he inherited that steel business and other stuff. I don't think he knew what to do with that company. David, so he didn't do well in the steel business. Subject, yeah, I always got the impression that his wife was the one with the real brains and not so much him. David, so after a while, they couldn't afford to pay you, is that correct? Subject, yeah, I think they had to move. David, so you think they had to sell their nice house because they couldn't afford to live there anymore? Subject, I think so, yeah. David, do you remember what they paid you by the week or maybe by the day or the month? Subject, no, by the week. David, do you remember how much you were paid by the week starting out? Or when you left? Subject, I think it was close to $32 a week when I first started. David, then it went up to what? $50? $55? Subject, yeah. David, so you got paid pretty well back then, is that correct? Subject, yeah, I did get paid well. I also knew languages. I spoke French and I spoke Danish? I think it was Danish. So I could charge more because of that. David, were you teaching the kids languages? Subject, yeah, I taught the girl French. David, was that the older daughter? Subject, yeah. David, and what was her name again? Subject, Prudence. David, and she was pretty fond of you as a teacher, wasn't she? Subject, she was a really bright little girl. David, did she learn violin or any other things while you were there? Subject, she played piano. David, so she was a bright, talented, nice young girl. Subject, yeah. David, well, so when you left, she was what, right around 14 roughly? Subject, yes. David, and was she sorry to see you go, since I guess you had become friends with her? Subject, she was sad. David, and how was Mr. Stanley handling this? Did he seem very edgy? How was he when his business started failing? Subject, I think he was cheating on his wife. David, so you think he was cheating on his wife? Now I want you to go forward in that life. You were what, around 35, 40 something when you left? Subject, I think I was 45. David, I want you to go forward to when you were 55. Do you see yourself now? Subject, long pause, yeah. David, and where are you working at that time? Do you remember? Subject, I work in a store for women's clothes, a dressmaking shop. David, are you still in your boarding house? Subject, no. David, and where did you move to? Subject, I moved in with my friend. David, was it less expensive? Subject, she was not married, and neither was I. David, do you see where your apartment was or where you lived? Subject, we had a cottage. David, did you have pets? Subject, no, but there was a cat that used to come around. Sometimes she would feed it. David, when you look at that cottage, can you describe what it was made out of? Subject, it was made out of stone. David, out of stone? Do you remember what street that cottage was on? Subject, no. It wasn't really on a street. It was on a property with a very large house, basically another estate. We lived in the cottage there. David, was this another rich family or something? Subject, yeah, she worked in their kitchen. David, your friend did? Subject, yeah. David, and where did you work? Subject, in the dressmaker shop. David, that's right, and do you remember the name of that shop? Subject, pause, M&K. David, M&K? Subject, yeah. David, was it owned by a husband and his wife? Subject, by a woman. David, and where in Boston was it located? Was it downtown? Subject, I don't remember. I wasn't familiar with the city. David, but you were able to take trolleys and get around, right? Subject, yeah. David, how long did you work at that dress shop? Subject, for about 12 years. David, so you worked there for a pretty long time. Subject, yeah. David, I want you to go to the end of that time. Take your time. And describe how you're looking now in that life. Subject, well, I'm very ill. David, sorry to hear that. Do you know what you are ill from? What did the doctors say? Subject, they said mumps, but I think it was a fever. Rheumatic fever. David, that's what it felt like, and you kind of knew that later, is that right? Subject, I knew I was seeing things, and my temperature wasn't normal. I was very sick. David, do you remember what the doctors gave you to try and make you feel better? What were the medicines? Subject, pause, I think I was given penicillin, but I was allergic to it. David, did that hurt you? Subject, it gave me hives, and my tongue swelled. David, and if it was penicillin, how old were you then? Subject, I was in my 60s. David, do you see what hospital you were in? Were you in a hospital or just at home? Subject, I was at home. David, and did you get well again or not? Subject, no, I don't think so. David, so I want you to just relax and visualize in your mind while you are feeling sick, and we are just observing that life. Do you see yourself when you passed away? How long were you sick for? Subject, less than 6 months. David, it just didn't get better, it got worse? Subject, MHMM, yes. David, do you remember how old you were when you passed away? Subject, pause, deep breath, I think I was 63. David, does that number sound real to you? Subject, yeah, 62 or 63. I think I didn't make it to my birthday. David, and when was your birthday, do you remember? Subject, in the spring in May. I died in April. David, you almost made it, didn't you? What day was your birthday? Do you remember what day in May? Subject, it was. Deep inhale, May 14th. David, May 14th. And do you remember what day you died in April? Subject, I died on the 26th. David, so you were pretty close to the birthday, weren't you? A couple of weeks away. Subject, yeah. David, were you trying to stay alive long enough for your birthday, or were you in too much pain? Subject, I think I didn't even know what day it was. David, you were that out of it? Subject, yeah. I kept seeing the man with the burned face. David, did he come to you while you were dying? Subject, yeah, I saw him. He sat in the room with me. David, did he comfort you? Subject, yeah, but he didn't sit next to me or anything. He just sat there in a chair across the room. I guess he just wanted me to know that I was not by myself. David, now while he's sitting in the room, where's your roommate during all of this? Subject, well, she had to work. David, so you would be at home sometimes by yourself except for this ghost in the chair, is that right? Subject, well, yeah. David, so he kept you company until she came home. Subject, yeah, and sometimes he stayed after she was home. David, but your roommate never saw him, is that correct? Was she sensitive to seeing ghosts, or did you tell her about it? Subject, she saw something, but I don't think she knew what to believe. David, she thought maybe you were hallucinating? Subject, she thought I was hallucinating. She thought my fever had spiked, but she saw his shape once. David, so she let you know she saw his shape. Subject, she said she saw something very queer. David, let's think about this history. You're all nice and relaxed, and you're seeing the room you are in. What did the room look like? Subject, there is a window, a big window to my right-hand side, and the bed was in the middle of one wall. David, did you have any pictures on the wall? Do you remember? Subject, a picture of my parents from when they were first married. And they were. David, what were their names? Subject, sigh, their names. Clifford and Mary. David, and their last name again was? Subject, their last name was Thompson. David, Clifford and Mary. Did they live in that area of Boston most of their lives? Subject, I think they lived outside the city. David, do you remember when you were younger what your father did for a living? Subject, he was a postman. David, oh nice. And how many brothers and sisters did you have? Do you remember? Subject, I was an only child. My mother had health problems. She couldn't have other children. David, now did your mother work? Subject, no, she didn't work. David, did your father deliver mail all over that area? Subject, yeah. David, was he with them a long time? Subject, yeah, he worked up until the day he had a heart attack. David, sorry to hear that. How many years was he with the Postal Service, do you think, up until the heart attack? Subject, I want to say about 40 years. David, was he with the United States Post Office? Subject, he worked for the government before he worked for the post office. But he worked for the post office for 14 of those years. David, he took a different job with the government. What did he do for the government before the post office? Subject, I think it had to do with taxes. David, he was a pretty smart guy. Subject, he was smart, yeah. David, well, they sound like very nice parents. Did you like your parents? Subject, I did. David, good, because they sound like nice people to me. Let's go back and look at Liza while she's there. Sounds like you had a wonderful childhood, I presume. Do you remember where you were born? Subject, Maynard? Mayweather? David, is that outside Boston in Massachusetts? Subject, yeah, 2 hours from the coast, I think. David, did you go down to see the ocean once in a while? Subject, yeah, I remember it as a child. David, did you take trips there? Subject, not often, but yes. David, how far again was this from the ocean? Did you ever know? Subject, I don't know, maybe 2 hours? David, so you were a little bit inland where you went to the beach. Subject, yeah. David, so you were born in Mayweather or Maynard. Do you remember what shore they liked to go to? What city was that near? What was that called? Subject, I don't remember. I was too young. David, so as your mother's health got worse, your trips to the beach decreased, I presume. Subject, yeah, I took care of her. David, so you the daughter were taking care of your mother in her sickness, is that right? Subject, yeah. David, that's a good daughter. Do you remember what issues she had with her health? Do you remember? What affected her the most with her health? Subject, pause, her lungs were bad. I think it was asthma. David, asthma, okay. Now you told me, give me your birth date again, please. Subject, my birthday was May 14th. David, and what year was that? Subject, I don't remember. Pause, 18 something. David, so it was 18 something. Subject, 1870 something, I think. David, look in your mind and what were the last two digits of 1800? Subject, 1876. David, so you were born in 1876, and you think you lived in either Mayweather or Maynard. Something with a May in it. Subject, yeah. David, your name was Liza. Subject, Marie Thompson. David, okay. You think it was May 18th, 1876 you were born, is that correct? Subject, May 14th. David, sorry, May 14th. Well, I want you to think about all of this for a moment. And I want to go back to your last moments. Can we do that? Subject, yeah. David, do you see when you passed away? You told me it was in April 23rd? Subject, 26th. As you noticed, the subject didn't waver on the date of her birthday or date of her death. She was deeply in the life as Liza Marie Thompson, and though I tried to trip her up, she remained steadfast with her responses. David, so April 26th. And what year was that? Subject, 1940. David, so you are pretty sure it was around 1940? Subject, yes. David, let's do this. I want you to sit there and remember those last moments of your life. All we are doing is observing, very relaxed. Describe to me right when you passed away what happened. Subject, I saw a light. I thought it was coming from the window, but then it wasn't really coming from any one place, it was everywhere. And I remember seeing the man with the burned face, and he was standing over me, and I asked him where we were going. He didn't say anything at first, but then he said, "You'll see when we get there." I don't remember anything after that. David, so you see the light, and it is around you, and the elderly man with the burned face was there. Subject, he wasn't that old. He would have been mad if you called him elderly. David, laugh, sorry, I just assumed. 30s? Subject, no, maybe he was in his 50s. David, but he wasn't what you would call old. Subject, no. David, was it one side of his face that was burned or his whole face? Subject, one side. One big burn on one side. David, do you remember what he did before he passed away? Did he ever tell you? Subject, no. David, so he didn't share a lot of information with you, but you could see him, and you would ask him things every once in a while, but he never really responded. Is that right? Subject, yeah. David, now when you were in the bright light, and you don't remember where you went, but all of a sudden did you find yourself eventually somewhere? Subject, no, I just remember. David, what do you think happened to you? Subject, well, I guess I must have gone to heaven, but I don't remember anything about it. I just remember the light and the feeling. David, you were in the light, and what do you remember? Subject, well, I didn't feel hot anymore. David, so your fever was gone. Subject, yeah, it was kind of cool actually. The weather, the air, whatever it was, it felt cool. David, when did the light end for you? Subject, what? David, I'm sorry, I didn't mean end. But when you passed, all of a sudden he's there and says, wait and you'll see. You don't remember anything after he said that? Except you said your fever was gone. Subject, no, I don't remember. David, did you see yourself coming out of your body when the light came? Subject, no, but I had a floating sensation, but I felt like that before, because of my fever. David, so you're not sure where you went? Subject, I don't know. David, that's fine. Now let's go forward a little bit more in that life after you forgot where you went. We're not going to look at time, but when did you feel like you were somewhere else, when you weren't in that cottage anymore? When did you realize you were somewhere else? Subject: I don't know. David: so after that, you have no memories of anything? Subject: no. David: okay. But you do remember light coming down. Did it feel like loving light? Subject: yeah, I felt comforted.